Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Educate. In this video, we'll be continuing from where we left off. In our previous video, we introduced the concept of vector spaces, what they are. Please make sure that you check that out before proceeding with this one for a cooler understanding, I can say. So today we'll be looking at the axioms of the vector spaces. So the axioms of a vector space kind of tell you what conditions must be met for a certain set to be a vector space. All right, I'm sure those people who have done applied mathematics, they have a broader knowledge of on different types of sets, but some of other sets, they are not really vectors. So for a set of numbers to be known as a vector space, what axioms or what qualities, what features, what characteristics must it have? So we are going to be looking at each and every one of them and trying to explain how they begin to be. So now let's just say we have got a vector, let's just say we've got a set, right? Let's just say we've got a set which I'm going to call the set as V. Bear in mind, I didn't say that this is a vector space, this is a set, right? And this set has got elements, right? Remember, for a set we use curly braces to be able to show that this is a set, of course. So this set here has got elements where it's got vectors inside it. All right, so let me just say this is a set of vectors given by maybe just say this is X, this is Y, which are element of all real numbers. Remember, by the way, we said that this 2 here just shows you that we're having 2 components here, or otherwise we're having 2 dimensions here, and these are all real numbers. So the value of X and the value of Y must strictly be real numbers. If you see anything else that has got an X value, that is an imaginary number, that's not a vector inside this vector space. I repeat again, students, just before I even go to the axioms, I said if this is telling you that X and Y, they must be real numbers, your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from negative infinity until positive infinity. But if I give you, for example, an imaginary number or a complex number, it is not part of this vector space. So having this, it's not part of this set, by the way. So having this set here, that I'm having a set of real numbers having X values and Y values, the first axiom that must be satisfied, let me just say we have got 2 vectors from this set. I'm going to pick this first vector to be vector U, given by the first X value, which is going to be X1, the second one, which is going to be Y1. So these are the components for a vector that I picked from this set. Okay, and then we are going to pick another vector, and I'm going to say this is vector W, and then this is going to have its own X value. That's how I'm going to use a different subscript to just show that these 2 are different from one another, and then this is going to have Y2 here. So these 2 are vectors that are inside V. Why am I saying that they're inside V? Please rewatch that video again. I said that for you to see that these are vectors inside this set. They have the same format. We start with an X value and then we follow with the Y value. We start with an X value, then we follow with the Y value. So this shows that these 2 are objects, or those 2 are vectors that are coming from this set, which is V. But now we want to show that this set here is a vector space. The first axiom that you're going to talk about is the closure under addition property. The closure under addition property says that the sum of vector U and vector V must be in the same set. So it simply means that if I'm going to add vector U and vector V, I must be able to get a sum or an object or a vector that is still part of this vector space. And I already told you last time, how do you see that an object is part of a vector space? So let's just try to prove that is this actually aligning with this axiom. Okay, so if I take, for example, I say I'm going to take vector U and I'm going to add it by vector W, or this is vector W, by the way. So this is vector W. If I'm going to add vector U and vector W here, vector U is given by the components X1 and Y1, right? And then vector W, I'm going to add it, is given by X2 plus and Y2. All right, so adding these 2, remember guys, when it comes to the vectors, the components that are corresponding to one another, those ones can be added together. I repeat again, when you are adding vectors, you add corresponding components. The x components add together, the y components add together. That's how you add vectors, right? These are still vectors, the same one that you know from before. So all those laws, they still apply in the same manner. So here, if I'm going to add this x1 plus x2 will give me x1 plus x2. And then when I'm going to add y1 and y2, this is going to give me y1 plus y2. So this is the sum of u plus w. So when I add vector u plus vector w, I'm going to get x1 plus x2, y1 plus y2. So now how is this axiom proven? Just by what I just did here, because I just added something more like trivial to you. Now the thing is, you can see that this is the sum, right? This is kind of like the sum of these two vectors, the sum of u and w. The sum of u and w has got an x component, which is the sum of x1 and x2. This is like one number. If we were to replace this, remember guys, these are real numbers. If we were to replace this with real numbers like 2,3, maybe 3,2, this will be 2 plus 3, and that's going to give you 5 here. So we're just using symbols here to keep that generality. So this is just a general one, but when you add x1 and x2, you're going to get one single number. When you add y1 and y2, similarly, you're also going to get one single number. So basically, this is still following the same format as the original vector, because the sum of x1 plus x2 is like one number. Maybe let's just say it's x3, right? And then the sum of y1 plus y2 is another number, which is y3. So this sum of u plus w, it is still giving you an x value. In this case, let's just say this is x3, the sum of these two, and then a y value, which is going to be y3, which is the sum of these two. So this is still the same format, because x3 and y3, those are still going to be real numbers again. And what argument do I have to prove that? I'm not assuming this, because we say that x and y are real numbers. The sum of two real numbers is a real number. So automatically, the sum of x1 and x2 will give you a real number. The sum of y1 and y2 will give you a real number. So this condition is automatically imposed. So we can just say that this sum is also a vector that is found in this vector space that is known as closure under addition. It simply means that when you add the two elements to one another, when you add the two elements, when you add the two objects or two vectors, you must get a vector that is within the same set. So done with axiom number 1, let's go to axiom number 2. Okay. So now axiom number 2 now is the commutativity addition. Yes. So in commutativity, you know that when you add a vector u plus w, you must be able to get w plus u. So we must prove that the addition of two vectors is commutative, means that whenever you choose to switch the u and w, you would still get the same sum. Okay, you will still get the what? The same sum. So when you just switch u and w, you will still get w plus u as well. So if you commute these two vectors, if one vector commutes to the other side, this one commutes to the other side, we would still get the very same sum. So this is known as the commutativity under addition property. And this must also be met for a vector space to be, or for this set to be known as a vector space. This property also must be met. We can prove this using this example as well. So using these examples of these two vectors from the set V, we are going to just say we want to find the sum of vector u and vector w. Now the vector u is given by x1 and then y1. The vector w is given by x2 and then y2, right? Yes. And then now when you add the two, when you add these two, the sum here is going to give you something like x1 plus x2, comma, y1 plus y2. Here we've already done it, as I've already shown you just in the previous step. So when you add these two, bear in mind, how do you prove now that the addition is commutative here? The whole point of doing commutative addition is to swap the values. By the way, guys, I told you that these are all real numbers. X and Y here, we're talking about what? Real numbers. And real numbers are naturally commutative. So if I add 2 and 3, 2 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 2. So automatically, I know that x1 plus x2 is the same as x2 plus x1 because those are just numbers, right? I sure I say it to me now. X and Y are all real numbers. So when I add x1 and x2 here, this will be a real number. When I add y1 and y2, I'm going to also get a real number. Now I'm imposing another condition, and I say that when you are adding two real numbers, you can just swap them because addition does not matter. So here, if I swap x1 and x2, and I rather say this is x2 plus x1, this will still give the same outcome because these are real numbers. You cannot automatically say that this is your conclusion for this one because these are vectors. Whenever you are adding vectors, it's not the same as adding numbers. But once you have reached this stage, you are allowed to swap them because you are aware that these components are all real numbers. So here, if you just say the sum of u and w, this is going to give you something like x2 plus x1, and then this is y2 plus y1. Okay, and even if you separate these two as well, if you separate these two, let me just say you separate x2 and its component, its corresponding component y2. This is going to be x2 and y2 plus, you separate these as well, this is going to be x1 plus x1 and y1. If you just separate them, you can see this is x2, it corresponds to this one. They're at the beginning, right? They're at the beginning of the sum. So you can separate them. And these ones are at the end of the sum. You can also separate them. And this is corresponding exactly to vector w. And this is corresponding exactly to vector u. So basically here you have proven that these two vectors, they are commutative. So we have got this property which is proving that addition is commutative in a vector as well. So the other ones I'm not going to prove to them, but I'm not going to prove them to you, but I'm just going to show you how they work so that you can be able to try and attempt the mathematical proofs yourselves. So the third one is saying that if I'm having a vector u plus a vector w plus a vector v, this is exactly the same as saying a vector u plus a vector w plus a vector v. This one is also similar, although I'm not going to really write it like the full mathematical proof, but basically this is one of the axioms that we consider whenever we want to classify a set as a vector space. All right, so here u plus w is more like a combination of u and w. It's a sum. We treat it as like one vector that is the sum of these two. This is one vector that is the sum of these two. So this is also distributivity. Can you say distributivity or associativity, or more like associativity, this one, right? Just like of proper terms. But basically here, when you add u plus w and you find this resultant vector, you add it to v. This is the same thing as adding w and v. You find their resultant, you add it to u. And that's your task to prove that. But this is one of the axioms that must be satisfied for something or for a set to be called a vector space. This one is the most important one, the identity element in a set. Each and every set must have an identity element for addition and multiplication for it to be classified as a vector space. I repeat again, this one is one of the most important ones. So now, if we have got a vector u and then now you add it to the zero vector, the first thing, each and every set must have a zero vector. So if we cannot have a vector having 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 components, then it means that that's not a vector space automatically. So here, how do we see that we've got a zero vector here? X and Y are an element of what? Of real numbers. 0 is a real number, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but 0 is a real number. So it means that if I want to pick out a zero vector from this vector space, it would look like something like this. It would have an x value of 0, a y value of 0. No ambiguity on that one. That's why I'm not writing x1, x2, because I already know that for a zero vector, all the components must have magnitude of 0. They must not have anything because a zero vector is a null point vector. It's a point. not really something that has got a big magnitude and direction and so forth. So the sum of u plus 0 is going to give me vector u. So this is known as an identity element. Why do we call this an identity element? Simply because a identity simply means that identity, just like your identity, right? So when you add a vector to a 0 vector, you must get that vector again. It must just come back the way it is. So it means that even if you do an operation of addition, right? Even if you do the operation of addition to this vector, the vector still retains its identity. It still remains the same even after doing the operation. This is a very, very significant thing because it is used in application as well. There are certain operations that you do on your phone that do not really have any effect, that do not really change anything. All of that, it uses the same logical sense of saying that whenever you add a vector to an identity element, the vector remains the same, but the operation was done. You did add the 0. You did add the 0. I repeat again, you did add the 0, but the vector did not change. Why did the vector not change? It's because the 0 vector is known as the identity element for addition. So a vector space must have the 0 vector within it. So in other words, I'm just trying to tell you that if a set does not have any 0 vector inside it, it's automatically not a vector space. If I give you a set and I say that my set is given by W, and this set has got a maybe y is greater than 0, whereby y is an element of real numbers. This is definitely not a vector space. Why am I saying that? It's because the 0 vector does not exist here. This is a restriction telling me that all the values of this vector space must be greater than 0. So it means that the 0 vector is not existing there automatically. It simply means that we do not have any component, we do not have any element or object that shows that there is a 0 vector inside. So here, this is an identity element for addition. We don't only have an identity element for addition, we must also have an identity element for multiplication. There is a certain number that you multiply with a vector and the vector remains the same. Whenever I say identity elements, I'm just trying to say you do an operation on a vector, but the vector does not change. It remains the same. But you do the operation, I repeat again, you do the operation. It's more like an operation that does not mutate the vector, an operation that does not change any element of the vector and its component, none whatsoever. So here, the multiplication identity element, it is 1. So if I multiply 1 with my vector v, or my vector u rather, I am still going to get the vector u. This is known as the identity element for multiplication. And this is one of the axioms that must be satisfied. It means that for a vector space, for a set to be qualified as a vector space, you must make sure that when you multiply 1 with that vector, you must get exactly that vector exactly as it is without, there must actually be an identity element inside it. Okay, I cannot think of examples whereby we don't have these identity elements because 1 is always there in most cases. But maybe if I restrict and I say maybe this must always be less than 0. This is a vector, this is a set, this set W, it has got only y values and these y values are all negative, they're all less than 0. So it means that we do not have 1 inside this space. Inside this set, we do not have 1. And 1 is an identity element for multiplication. So automatically this axiom is broken for this space. This set is not a vector space because we don't have a 1 inside it. We also don't have a 0 as well because all values are less than 0. And we don't have a 1 as well. So automatically this cannot be a vector space. Then now we go to the 6th axiom. We'll get there. We'll definitely get there. We have got an inverse element inside the vector space. The inverse element inside the vector space it exists such that u plus negative u must be able to give you the 0 vector. Okay, u plus negative u must be able to give you the 0 vector. This is coming from axiom number 4. It's just kind of like a sub-axiom of axiom number 4. Imagine you transpose this, it becomes negative. You transpose that, 0 goes on the other side. If you treat it in that way algebraically, it still makes sense as well to an extent. So here, we have got this element. This is known as an inverse element. The inverse element inside a set, it is actually going to be having a different sign, or it is going to have a different sign. If the vector here, it has got a scalar multiplication of 1, this one will have -1. If it has got a scalar multiplication of 2, this one would have -2. And when you add them together, they must give you the 0 vector exactly as it is. They must give you the 0 vector. So try to prove these ones. Prove all of these ones because you already saw the trend on how to prove this. But there must also be an inverse element inside the set for the set to be known as a vector space. Now let's go to the 7th axiom as we are about to close down. We have got the scalar multiplication, one of the most important ones as well. Now, whenever I multiply with a scalar quantity, remember, a scalar quantity is a real number. It's just a real number, just a number, a real number. So if I take a vector, let me just say this is my vector u, and I multiply it with a real number, which is c. Okay, so this c multiplied by u must be in what? It must be in v as well. So if I multiply my vector with a constant or with a number, if I multiply this vector with a constant or with a number, whatever product I'm going to get there, it must be inside v as well. This one you can quickly prove it, because if you take one vector, which is u, and you multiply maybe with 2, if you say 2 times u, this is going to give you 2 times your u here. Let's just substitute the u. The u is given by x1, and then this is comma y1. So this is going to give you 2u is equals to, remember this is a number, it can distribute over the components successfully. So this can be 2x1, right, comma 2y1. This is the final product. So this is 2 times the vector, we get this, right? And if you look carefully, this is 2 times x1. Your x1 is a real number. Remember, it's a real number because we're taking from this set, right? This is a real number for x. This is a real number for y as well. So this is still within the same vector space. So we can just say this is closed under scalar multiplication. It means that whenever you pick out a scalar, here in this case, your c is an element of real numbers as well. Whenever you pick your c is a real number. You multiply c or whatever a constant, you multiply it with a vector. You must be able to get a product that is still inside this vector space, meaning that it must still have an x value as stipulated, a y value as stipulated. And this is going to prove that this is closed under a scalar multiplication. We also have got distributivity under scalar multiplication, whereby we have got a scalar c that is being distributed over the sum of vectors a, u, and v. This must give you c times u plus c times vector v. So basically there is scalar distributivity, scalar multiplication distributivity. Whenever you multiply the scalar inside the bracket, the scalar can multiply the first vector. The scalar can also multiply the second vector. So instead of saying that the sum multiplied by the scalar, you can just say the scalar multiplied by the first vector plus the scalar multiplied by the second vector. So you are able to distribute the scalar, and then that must give you the same thing as just doing scalar multiplication on the sum itself. Okay, we also have got as well another distributivity type, whereby we have got okay, let's just say we have got scalars. Okay, scalars. Okay, we have got 2 scalars. We have got the first scalar that is being multiplied by another scalar multiplied by vector u. So here your c and your beta, all of these 2 are scalars as well. So this scalar can multiply with the scalar as well. This is going to just give me something like c times beta. All of these are 2 scalars. They are 2 numbers. They literally multiply one another. And this is all multiplied to the vector. So if I have something like 2 and 3 here, if I'm saying this is 2 into 3u, this is the same thing as saying 2 times 3, which is going to be 6, right? This is going same thing as saying 2 times 3 times vector u, which is going to be 6u. So this is one of the axioms that you must definitely make sure that we satisfy as well. The last axiom that you're going to satisfy to be able to prove that this set is a vector space is that if you're having the sum of two scalars, let's say you're having a scalar c and a scalar beta, and then you multiply this with a vector u, the vector itself, it is supposed to be able to distribute over the two scalars. So saying c plus b times the vector u, because this is trying to say that the scalar for this is c plus b, right? We can just say that this is the same thing as saying c times vector u plus b times vector u. Simply means that here you can distribute this vector inside the sum of two scalars and still get the same product. Okay, so all of these are axioms that we use to prove that this is a vector space. But by the way, whenever you are told to prove that this is a vector space, there are only 4 core axioms that you must prove. Don't prove all 10 because you won't have time unless, I don't know, but basically don't prove all of them. You only need to prove 4 essential ones, and then the other ones are automatically proven as well. So the first one that you must prove, it is the closure under addition. This is important axiom number 1. Okay, prove that the sum of the two objects or the two vectors is found inside the vector space, right? Number 2, don't prove associativity and commutativity. Don't prove all of this. The next thing that you should prove is to prove that the zero vector exists inside. So you have to prove this one as your axiom number 2. You must prove that the zero vector is found inside the set. The third one that you must prove is the existence of an inverse. So you must prove that we have got an inverse element such that when you add the inverse of the original vector, you must get the zero vector. And then the last one that you must prove, and the most important one, it is the closure under scalar multiplication, that whenever you multiply a scalar with a vector, whatever product that you get, it must also be an object, or it must also be a vector that is found in V. This is the fourth one. So whenever questions come and they say, is this a vector space or not, and give you a reason for your answer, you are supposed to do what? You're supposed to prove at least these 4. When you prove these 4, it's automatic that this is going to be commutative, this is going to be associative. All of these other conditions are automatically imposed. Okay, so now you have got your guide here. Please make sure that you review here, you replay the video, you rewatch, and thank you so much for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to also stay tuned.